Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing? I see a couple of folks are tuning in and watching. Let me add that banner back up on the top there so you know who we are. Um, my name is Andrew. We're streaming from our home in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania, and hopefully you all are doing well out there. We've had a busy day today. Busy day yesterday. Um, we had a fun night, I think, sculpting last night. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. Um, and we've got some things planned, but I'll get into that in a second. I'm going to see who's watching. Cindy's watching. Hey, Cindy. Cindy says, hello, all. Be sure to like and share. Yes, please. Harry's watching. Hi, Harry. Amanda's watching. Hi, Amanda. Let's see who else we've got. Oh, another Cindy. Hello, Cindy. Um, yeah. So we've had a busy day today. I spent some time at the cottage doing some work there. William was doing some shipping. Barb locked her keys in the cottage, so we had to do a little trade off so she could get in. And then it turned out that she drove by just when we were there. So she gave us back our keys and picked up her keys. So we were doing that. William had a doctor's appointment this morning. I think everything went well. From what he said, sounded good, very positive. So that's always exciting. Um, he's been going through quite that ordeal lately with his health, and luckily, knock on wood, things seem to be leveling out with the medication and changes to diet and stuff. But yeah, so that's good. And then what else? We've had a busy week, kind of planning stuff for the future and lining things up and getting things kind of situated. One of the reasons why I'm on tonight is because Jen is filming with William at the cottage. And so I had to come back home and get everything situated here to do the live tonight. And they're going to actually try to film two because she's going to be away to go see the eclipse. I think I can't remember where William said she was going to go, but yeah. Uh, so they're filming two Saturday morning tutorials. If you don't know what I'm talking about, they can be found on our YouTube channel. And I don't know if I have a banner for our YouTube channel. I do. If you go to youtube.com/allegory gallery, all one word, you can find our live events like this one, and you can find our Saturday morning tutorials, which they've been filming. This is going to be, I think, the 41st and 42nd, maybe 42nd and 43rd Saturday morning tutorials. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe, but it's true. All right. So if you're watching, please say hello. Maybe say where you're tuning in from. It's always nice to see where folks are watching from. Besides that, we did some African things the other night. If you missed that, you can still watch the replay, and a lot of stuff is still left over. So you can attempt to claim things if you'd like. Last night we did a sculpting demo. And then we had a D-Stash event going on in the D-Stash group. So if you missed that, I think William kept it open a little bit longer. So there's still a chance for you to claim things there if you are interested. Diane's watching. Hello. And she's in Nelly's Ford, Virginia. Cindy's in Northern California. Oh, nice. So yeah, we're in Little Ligonier. Um, our shop, we're still in the middle of the move. We were in Ligonier for the past 12 years and some change. We decided to move our shop to Johnstown, where we bought a building last year, and we're in the process of fixing it up and getting that ready. Hopefully, we get it by the end of April. However, you never know. Um, it always feels like for me that things seem to like whenever we're planning to move, things start happening like at a glacier pace. So, we're trying to ride the wave and do what we can so that we don't stress out too much over things that we can't really control. And we're super excited. So that's the project that we're working on. We haven't posted any pictures of the new space yet because there hasn't been a lot of like transformation yet. A lot of the stuff we've been doing is like going through boxes, organizing boxes, trying to streamline things and plan out displays. Um, and there isn't really a good like visual to that. So we have not posted any pictures, but once we start actually getting in there and actually doing stuff and putting paint on the walls, we'll definitely start sharing those because you are our support network and you help make that possible. Without all of you out there and the AG Bead fam hashtag, we couldn't do it without you. So, oh, Susan's watching. Hey, Susie. She's our neighbor. So we've been busy, busy, busy with the move, running errands, getting things kind of situated, and yeah, trying to keep the business afloat. Even though we don't have the physical store open, we still are available online. So if you need some kind of bead related something or another, you can check out our website. That's www.allegorygallery.com. The it's right up here, the address. And if you can't find it, you can email us at info@allegorygallery.com and maybe we have it. And don't be afraid to ask because we have lots and lots of random things that you never know if you're going to be able to find it. Like one time somebody was like, I need the specific the specific color of chiton and it has to be this exact size, it has to be vintage. And it's like, well, what do you know? I have a box full of those random things from the 1920s. Here you go. So you never know what we've got. So if you are in need of something, let us know at info@allegorygallery.com and maybe just maybe we can hook you up. So for today, what I thought we would do is we're going to talk about painting and surface embellishments. If you did not know my background is in painting and mixed media, and I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City. And yeah, I've been taking a lot of classes lately on metalsmithing, and my goal is to merge my my painting and two-dimensional work and my sculpture with my jewelry and metalsmithing. So I'm all in the process of making that all come together. And hopefully you all, if you don't follow me on Instagram, that's probably one of the best places to keep an eye on what I'm doing. That's Andrew Thornton Artist. Don't forget to add that N in the middle and Thornton. A lot of times people leave that out and then they're like, I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. But I should pop right up if you're watching one of these videos. William's watching. He says, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Um, and hopefully y'all are going to have a good time, learn some stuff. What else do we have? Um, oh, last night, if you didn't watch last night, I did a hashtag AG live challenge, AG live challenge, to work with pastels. And a couple of you actually did it. So all of the pieces that I saw that came up were really good. The day before, we did kind of an impromptu challenge to work with African beads. And some of y'all really got into that one and posted a lot of stuff. And then the first one we did was make something green or with green. And some of y'all did it. So I think they're just really fun. They're kind of an informal way to like spark creativity. It's not anything that you're like committed to doing, but it is fun if you are able to play along. Because I always like to see what people make. So we did just recently have our Meet Your Creative Community Day, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I like to see all the things that people were posting. I thought it was really refreshing. I feel like a lot of times, the spotlight is on me and William, sometimes Jen, and but our community is so much larger than just us. It incorporates all of you out there who are watching. So it's nice to kind of see, and interact in a way that's a little bit different. So we get to learn more about you out there instead of just like everything about like me. So, anyways, yeah, so that just happened. And I think it was a lot of fun. I think it was a success. We have to kind of look at things to see if we're going to do it again, and if we do it again, are we going to keep it the same or change it? If you did participate, let us know what your experience was. Did you all have a good time? Did you all enjoy that? Um, Let us know, and maybe we'll do it again. We did have a Zoom meetup, which was a lot of fun also. There were a couple of new faces, which is always exciting, I think, for us particularly, because, some of y'all we see every day. And while we love to see you every day, sometimes it's cool to see new folks. So it was nice to see some people who don't normally get to tune in live. I know one person said that they watch our videos on replay. So they said, you'll never see a comment come up from me because usually I'm too busy working at that time that you go on. And so you won't see me. So it was nice to hang out. All right. So before I digress too much, let's do this. Let's turn this around and we'll get started. And hopefully y'all like it. So you're going to see the ceiling for a little bit as I adjust my cameras and get situated. We're not real fancy or high tech here. I mean, William's high tech. I can't speak for him, but me, I'm kind of analog. That's just the way it is. All right. Okay, back ultra wide camera. Here you go. So if you didn't see last night, this is a piece that I made live with all of you out there. We went step by step on how to sculpt this bas relief rabbit. And afterwards, I did a little reel that talked about what happened after I baked this. So I put this in the oven, I tinted it, and I put it in the oven at 275 for 45 minutes. And I baked this in the oven, and then I came back and did it. I scrubbed it with a toothbrush, a dedicated toothbrush for my craft purposes, not the one that I use in my mouth hole. Um, and I scrubbed off some of the pills. Now, there is a lot of texture on this, and we over exaggerated the texture on purpose, and you'll see why in just a little bit. Um, but in before I'm getting ahead of myself, but so after I scrubbed it with a toothbrush, I got in there with a Scotch-Brite pad, and it took off a majority of those little, I call them clay boogers, and it took off a lot of that, and it made it into this really lovely. I think it's a little lovely piece. I think I like it. I'm pleased with how it turned out. And then on the back, there were a couple places that the joins I didn't smooth. So I went back in and I smashed up the clay until it was super soft and squishy, and smeared it in those cracks. And they weren't really like cracks because um, they weren't like an accident. I think of cracks sometimes as like being accidents, or like, I don't know. But where the clay met that it didn't kind of fill in, that's what I did. I went back and filled it in, and then I cured it in the oven again for 45 minutes at 275, and it turned out nice and sturdy. Now, today I worked on a tutorial on how to do mold making, and William's going to be working on that. That's going to debut in our YouTube channel. So hopefully y'all like that, and find it interesting and informative. If you do like those types of videos, let us know, because then we'll make more. A lot of the stuff that I think is neat, maybe you don't think is neat. So if we get that customer feedback that they want to see certain things, we can always endeavor to try to do it. You just never know. All right. So after I washed and dried this, it took off some of those little pills. I did have to go over it with that sponge a little bit, and it took off the rest of the kind of dingleberries, clay dingleberries. So here you go. All right. So who wants to see a sneak peek of what I worked on today? Anybody? Let me know if you're interested in a sneak peek. And maybe I'll show it, maybe I won't. We'll see. You let me know, because otherwise I'm just sitting here looking at myself. Actually, I can't see myself, but just talking at the telephone. Cindy says, amazing rabbit, Andrew. Thank you. Hopefully it'll get even more amazing once I start embellishing the surface and adding paint. It's a fine line. Sometimes you can have something and have it, the simplicity of it, kind of carry it, or you work in one material. I personally love a lot of mixed media jewelry and sculpture and things like that, so I don't mind at all. But I know some people, they don't like that mix and match style. Cheryl says sneak peek please and hi. And Cindy says, sneak peek, please. Well, let's wait till the end, or at a natural stopping point, so that I can show you the thing that I've been working on today. All right. So I have this, and do you remember the subway tile? It's actually clean now, clean-ish. So this is a subway tile. This is a great surface, and one of the reasons why it's great is because if you have your work on it, you can stick it down with some blue stick. It's like a tacky blue thing Tacky is in like sticky, not in like gauche or whatever. So if you don't want this to move, you can put a little of that blue, like oh, what do they call them? So it's blue, and they call it, I don't know, but you can hold it holds stuff in place, and you can put that in there, and you can move it around. For me, it's a little bit weeble wobbly, but as long as you can, you can paint. That's the thing that matters. All right, so we've got this handy dandy subway tile, and that's going to be for me so that if I need to pick something up and look at it from a different angle. Amy says Loctite. No, that's a little bit too aggressive. It's that stuff. It's like it looks like gum, and it's blue, and it's not liquid nails, but something like that. But anyway, so and maybe Loctite makes a brand of it. I don't know, but it's kind of that sticky stuff that holds things. Um. So, anyways, we worked on sculpting that, and I'm going to show you how to embellish it. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mix up some colors. So, you can buy gesso. Oh, I mentioned that I washed this, but I washed it again with Cindy says poster tacket like removable putty. Yeah. So if you put this on the back and you put this on your subway tile, you can pick it up and move it around and stuff, and it's not going to slip and slide. Amanda says Loctite does make one. It's called Fun Tack. Well, that sounds funtaculous. Um, Anyways, so that holds it in place, and you don't have to worry about slipping and sliding. It's also relatively easy to use. It's accessible. A lot of people use it for other applications, but for this, we can hold our work still using that little sticky putty stuff. Right. So when whenever you're putting paint down, there's a couple things you need to think about. For one of the main things you have to think about is if it's clean. Now, some things it won't matter. However, if you're working on creating something that's like super smooth and really smooth and delightful, you're not going to want all these little crusties in it and to make it all textured. So just keep that in mind. All right. So we need to have a clean surface. You don't want to have it all dusty and dirty or oily, because the paint will not stick to your piece if it's dirty like that. The other thing is we want to have a tooth. There's a couple different ways that you can get a tooth on polymer clay. One of the things is you can dust your piece with cornstarch before you fire it. You can also fire it in a container of cornstarch. It is a way that um, you can seal it in with a cornstarch, and it will help hold up kind of fragile things, but it will also not uh, really ding up your piece. So if you have something that's really fragile, um, you know, it's tricky, but you can make it work. So you need to have it clean. You need to have a tooth that's so that something sticks to it. And let's see what's the other thing that you have to consider when you're putting down. Um, you'll want to do some tests, because not all things work equally or as well as it could. All right. So, you know, there are certain types of paint, and it may work for you, it may not. So you just kind of have to keep those things in mind. I would recommend, if you're serious about going down this path, to keep a little idea book, um, where you kind of jot down notes about the presentation and your own experimentation, and see how it goes, right? All right, so I've got this. The gesso is the first really good underlayer, and that's going to help keep the paint sticking to the surface. So you can get this in white and black. Um, I decided to make my own color, and I added different paint until it turned out into this purplish gray. But for this project, that's not going to necessarily work. However, it is darker. So in that regards, it is helpful. All right, I have a bunch of paintbrushes, all different sizes, none of them expensive, and I do a lot of my work using these. And sometimes people think, "Oh, that's the dregs," but I've done really detailed and amazing work using like an eyelash. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on brushes. If you can, that's awesome, but you don't necessarily have to do that. All right, so this is the white gesso that I've mixed with different paint to create this kind of purpley gray color. I'm going to scoop out a little bit, maybe the size of a quarter, maybe a $half. Let's do a $half. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, I've got that paint. It's actually gesso that's been tinted with other colors of paint. I'm going to get the carbon black, which is this, or maybe it's this. Let's see. So I've got a little bit of this. This is like more of a dark brown. I tend to prefer to use golden paint. I think the colors are really vibrant and saturated. Um, and I think I like the fluid acrylic because it has the right consistency for me. If I want it thicker, I can make it thicker. If I want it thinner, I can make it thicker or thinner. So sometimes with like the medium bodied acrylics, they're really cool. But if you want to work in thin layers, you really have to like water them down. So I just like these. I think they work well. So what I'm doing now is I'm mixing black and that dark kind of brown with this purplish gray color. And I want the color to be pretty uniform across. Now, the base of this gesso that I did use was a white. So, you know, you're kind of walking a fine line. So just keep that in mind in case you want to paint something like that, like this, using these techniques. So I'm going to add a little bit more of that dark brown. I need to get some more paints, y'all. And this, in reality, you're not going to see a ton of this. However, it is good. We're going to work on building up color. All right. And it's going to work in our favor to create illusion. Now, I have kind of a scraggledy brush. Some people, they'd see this and they'd be like, pitch it. But the thing that I like about a nice kind of semi-stiff scraggledy brush is that you can really dig into the details and make them more prominent. All right. So I've got this. I'm going to take this paint, this kind of dark charcoaly gray color, and I'm going to work it into the creases and crevices. Now, remember when I said that um, There's a reason why we made the texture so overt. Well, the reason is that when we paint, the paint gets stuck in the crevices, and so the crevices are our detail. And when you do that, sometimes that those crevices get filled in with the paint, and you lose definition. It becomes a little bit softer and a little bit smoother that way looking. But we're lucky that that this is we thought about that ahead of time, and we're able to compensate for that. So we're not going to lose all of our detail. We are going to lose some of it. We've already lost some to the cleaning process, but the goal is to have enough texture that you can, it looks good. And you can read it from far away too. That's the other thing is like, you can make a sculpture, especially like if you're working in narrative elements. And if people don't see it right away, they're just not going to see it. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. Did that make sense? I don't know. I'm free associating. Basically, I am just painting this rabbit. Now, I'm kind of avoiding the eyes right now because when I get closer to the eyes, I'm going to want to use a slightly finer brush. But I'm working the paint or the color gesso into the surface of the rabbit and into this texture. Oops. If I accidentally hit the eye, it's not the end of the world. The eye is glass, so in theory, I can take like a micro Q-tip with some isopropyl alcohol and just wipe it right off. But we could also paint it, so there's that. But for these, they're nice and shiny and they're water resistant, so you can really get in there and clean them up, and it will not be painted on in the eyeball. All right, so I'm adding this now because we are doing a demo, and y'all don't want to watch paint dry, I assume. Where I'm going to bust out the heat gun. Now, the heat gun is particularly nice because you can really get in there and do some fast work. However, sometimes that's dangerous if you're just going to leap into things. So, anyways, there you go. I even am doing my initials. Now, what we did during the video today that I filmed, I don't know when that's going to debut, but probably not on Saturday morning since we've already got one already going. But yeah, so I'm just painting away. Oh, and the thing I was going to say is that because it's not always easy to film from your home or somebody else's home, especially if you've never met them before. So you can not go crazy and meet other people. Some people don't like other people. That's fine. All right. So I'm getting close to where I need to be. And the whole point of that rambling, the little rambling diatribe, I don't know if you would even call it a diatribe. But the whole reason for that, I don't know. All I know is that I'm painting. I'm turning my piece around so that I can spot any places that I missed and can go back over real quickly and catch those and kind of write them write them up. Make them a little bit more right. All right. I'm not going to worry about the back right now because we're going to get to that eventually. But right now, we're going to use the front. And I've got my handy dandy blow dryer, and that's going to speed this up. It's going to be like the power of cooking with Julia Childs. You know how she'd go off topic every once in a while? Well, there you go. You have to have that the power of TV, and you stick a turkey in the oven, and then a second later the turkey comes back out and it looks delicious and wonderful. So we're going to do the same exact thing. All right. So I'm going to set this aside. I don't want this in the direct line of fire for my blow dryer. For one, I can melt the plastic. Number two, I may need this to touch up later. So I don't want to waste. So I'm going to put this off to the side out of the cooking area. And if you're like, what the heck are you talking about cooking area? I've got a blow dryer, and that's going to speed things up tremendously. All right, let me see if I can readjust this. And if you've never used a hair dryer or a heat gun or any kind of thing like that, you want to make sure that what you have on your work surface is not going to blow away or get destroyed or get lost when you turn this on, because invariably you're going to like look up, or the gun's going to move or whatever, and you're going to have problems. So one thing you need to be mindful of is check out your surroundings, make sure nothing's flammable, or it's not easy going to get caught up in the fire. Um, and the other thing that you want to do is you want to keep this moving. If you stop in one spot, it's going to blister the clay. And if there's any air bubbles in it, which there probably are, they're gonna act funny and blow up and all kinds of stuff. So we don't want that to happen. So we're gonna keep our tool moving. We're gonna keep this end moving, and we're gonna gently dry it. All right. Normally speaking, when I'm working on this, I kind of go into production mode. So I will have like 6 or 7 of these going, maybe 10, 12, 20, however many I need to make. And by the time I finish all of them and circle back around, I come back to that one little old thing. And so, yeah. All right. You're going to hear the hairdryer for a little bit. I'm moving this on the surface. I'm being mindful not to blow anything over. I'm going to get all of the different areas, even underneath. I don't want to touch it yet with my fingers. That's going to come soon enough. All right. So if you missed that part where we stippled and really got into the texture, you want it to go in the recesses. That's like the whole goal of this, is you're putting that black paint in the recesses. Now, if you have a store like my friend Stephanie does called the Black Bunny Boutique, you may be done. But I'm going to take you and show you how to make that white rabbit, kind of like that white rabbit. And we're going to use this as our teaching tool. All right. So we had this dark color, And we talked about how we don't want to, we talked about how we over exaggerated the texture yesterday so that when we paint on it and some of those recesses are filled with paint and dry, um, it's not going to lose all the texture. We don't want to lose all the texture. Otherwise, I would have sculpted this smooth. I want to show that kind of naturalistic fur. So that's why I did what I did. All right. So I've got my palette here, and I don't tend to use a lot of paint. I use a little tiny dabs, and then I can add to it. Okay, so the next step is I've got to add a little bit of yellow, just a wee bit. I've got this. And I've got this one. This is a nickel azo gold. If you can find this, somebody bought up all of this pigment that makes this particular color. So Golden retired this color. Even though I love this color, it's one of my all-time favorites. They retired it. So if you have a bottle of this or can acquire a bottle of this before the prices shoot up into the, I don't know how much they're going to go for, but probably quite a bit. So get this now before you can't get it at all, because once it's done, they're going to start price gouging people and who knows what else. So this is a really lovely color. And we're just going to need just a itty bitty drop of this. We're not going to need a ton. We're not going to need a ton of it. So one paintbrush, just a tip. I don't know if you can see that or not, but just a tip. And I'm going to mix this white and yellow. And I'm going to see how that kind of turned out into this kind of buttery golden yellow. That's real pretty, but we still need to do some work. All right. So we're going to put this nickel azo gold away. And we're going to see if I can take a little bit of that dark color and mix it in a little bit. That turns it into kind of a greenish gray color. And I'm going to warm that up with a little bit of burnt sienna. And I just need a teeny tiny drop. If I need more, I can get more. I'm going to warm it up with that. And what you're noticing when I do this, oh, by the way, I don't have expensive brushes. I have really cheap brushes that I abuse until they fall apart. So there you go. Some people are real particular. I'm not. All right. So I'm going to get that titanium white again. Titanium white is a little bit more opaque than some of the other whites. For instance, zinc white is really translucent. So that's really great if you're like doing this like diaphanous, like a portrait of this like diaphanous silk robe or something. You may want to use that because you can get away with, um, you know, using the color, but yeah, you have to build up layers of that if you want it to be like white. Whereas with titanium white, it's pretty much like, it's pretty white. All right, so this kind of weird baby poop mustardy color, that is what we're working on. And I'm also purposely not adding water at this point. I don't want water. I want this nice and stiff and almost dried out. So just keep that in mind. If I wanted to accelerate that, I could hit it with a heat gun just a wee bit and get it to kind of dry out a little bit. I don't want this to be runny. I want this to have a nice, stiff stiff um, paint body. All right, so this technique that I'm going to do right now is called dry brushing. Now, there's a couple different ways to think of this. If you go with the grain of the fur, you're going to have problems. And the problems that I'm talking about is that it's going to fill in the places that you just finished kind of adding those details. So we're going to want to lightly go perpendicular and run that across the surface of the lines. All right, does that make sense? If I go with the lines, I'm going to fill in the lines. So sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you're backed into kind of a spot. I am going to lighten this up around the eyes a little bit more heavy-handed, not so much the dry brush, but their eyes around the the pupil and the iris and stuff. It's usually a little bit brighter, so I'm gonna put that in there. Now, if I accidentally hit that stone bead that I used for the eye, it's not the end of the world. Like I said earlier, I can always clean that off, and it's relatively easy. And then I'm going to just continue dry brushing all the way around my sculpture, my relief sculpture. And if you have too much paint on your brush, this is a good opportunity for you to have like a little paper towel on the side, and you can wipe off the excess. And then that way you're just hitting it with the driest kind of um the driest kind of conditions. You don't want that to be too mushy or too wet. We want this to be nice and kind of dry, and we're working against the grain that we sculpted in, the grain of the fur, so that we can really see all those details. So this is dry brushing. Now, on the inside of the ear, there's a little bit of pink. And there's also a little bit of pink on the nose, too. So I may have to run downstairs and get some of that. Or I can just play it by ear. Now, if I was making this for a plaque, I could make it so that it hangs directly onto the wall by putting some hardware there that makes it easy for this to hang. However, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make backgrounds and then have these kind of sculptural pieces and glue them on to those backgrounds. At least that's the plan. So there you go. All right. So I'm just dry brushing. I'm going to go all over the piece. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to, and this brush is not a big brush. And one of the reasons why is you want to be able to get into the nooks and crannies. Because sometimes if you use too big of a brush, you won't be able to fit it in all those recessed areas. And then it defeats the purpose. Okay, you may be saying, boy, that bunny looks sick. Because there's a lot of yellow or maybe kind of dirty. But you'll see what the next step is if you keep following along. All right. So right now I'm just dry brushing this light pale kind of Titian buff color. We made it ourselves using mostly the titanium white with a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of this kind of purplish gray color that I use for the base. Now, as you're doing this, you have to go all the way around your pieces so that you make sure that you hit everything and that when it goes out into the world, you don't catch it at the last second and start panicking because you left something out that you wanted to do or show. So here I am. I'm creating that. Now, this paint is almost dry, so I can take a little dab of water and kind of rehydrate it. And I can just lightly skim over the tops of this. And we're building those illusions of depth. And one of the ways that we're going to do that, I'm going to take this bright white. Is just pure this. Put this off to the side. You don't need a lot. And then I'm going to kind of work this into the brush and take off the excess. And then I'm going to look at my highlights. So we know that there is a highlight here. So I'm going to go just over that cheek. And we know that we want to have a illusion that this comes out a little bit more. So we're just going to hit this kind of loosely here. We know that the mouth, there's got a little more of a protrusion there. So we got hit that over there like this. And then around the eye, we talked about that. I'm going to hit this with a little bit more white, particularly in the highlight zone. So at the top of the lid, at the bottom of the lid, there's this kind of weird little fluff thing that happens. We're going to hit that. Again, we're just dry brushing. There's, again, this a lightness that comes around like this. And if you need a reference, you can also do a reference. I'm working kind of by memory, but if I need to, I can look at the image and see that like I need to hit a highlight on the what do they call it? The shell of the ear. And then once I have that, I can use my picture as a reference. But the thing is that it's already becoming its own thing. So it is good to have those points of reference. The other thing is that my picture is in black and white, which is really good if you're going to do value scales and think about contrast, like where is it darkest, where is it lightest, and you kind of build in those moments of illusion doing that. Now we know that the arm is going to stick out, the top, the like shoulder. So I'm going to hit that with this brighter white. See how good my signature came out? That turned out pretty good. So we're going to just go, and we know that there's going to be some right back here. I'm just going to dry brush that on and kind of mix that in and work that in. All right. So I'm working that in. I'm going to go just a little bit over and just create that kind of sense of fur and fluff. And we're going to try to make this like a soft looking, it will look kind of, I want this to look inviting, like you want to touch it. And then, like I said, we're going to, every once in a while, we're going to pick up our piece and turn it. And we're going to see what we can see. All right. So one of the things that we have to think about is if we've done any kind of build outs like this, that's gonna, that ear's pretty thick. If that was like more likely than anything, we're gonna be looking at the piece like this. So we're not gonna be looking at it necessarily from like the back behind. So we want to keep that illusion still. And then I'm gonna keep hitting this with the light color, that white. And I'm just hitting those highlights and building in that sense of fluff. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to do a wash after this. So if you have anything that's super bright in color, like if you have a lime green, once you hit it with a wash, it's no longer going to be lime green. It's going to be, a darker shade um, of um, of that green color. All right. So if this rabbit had any kind of markings, say it wasn't a white rabbit, but like more of like a yard rabbit or whatever, you could really put those kind of patterns and shapes in at this stage, and you can build up. Say this one had like a white chest, you could then go roll over this with a bright white, and then when you apply your glaze, you'd focus mostly on the back here, and then that way you can build those patterns in. So you don't have to do just one color thing. The thing about what we're doing here is, even though this is a white rabbit, um, when you look at something that's white, it's never usually like white white. You know, when you look at a cloud, there's grays and yellows and blues. There's all these different colors. When people think of clouds, the first thing they're gonna say is white. And so they make like a white cloud. And that's a great icon. That's a great kind of form language where people know exactly what that is. However, if you're trying to be a little bit more naturalistic and more realistic, you're going to have to embrace that nuance. So we started off with a very dark paint layer, and got really worked that into the nooks and crannies. And then we went over with kind of a Titian buff, um, kind of a yellow, pale yellowy, kind of buff beigey color. And then we hit this on top with some white. So we've got this. Now, you could be done if you wanted to be. You can be like, oh, I'm done. Call it a day. I'm gonna wash my brush out before it gets too dry, and then I don't have a brush anymore. So I'm going to run downstairs and get a few more colors of paint, and then I'll come back. So take a look at this bunny rabbit. What are you having for dinner? Are you working on any projects? Let me know. All right. So I'm back. All right. So what we're going to need is a little bit of red. I've got this kind of Christmassy red. And then this one has a little bit more of a blue and to it. And then I also have this magenta. Now, when we're doing this, see how bright that is? I've got my napkins. I want to pick up just the tiniest touch of that. And I want to pick up the tiniest touch of this red. It's more of a magenta kind of fuchsia-y red. And then I want to get the teeniest, tiniest little dot of that magenta. Just a little tiny bit. These paint colors, I paint a lot and they've lasted a long time. All right, now the rest of it, I need some white, some more white. A lot of this, you use a lot of white. I'm going to put this back over here on my little white color. And then I'm going to scoop up a big dollop, and mix that. Now, that's a little too dark. So I'm going to put more white. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating two tonal values. By adding white, you're making a tint. So this is a little bit darker. This is a little bit lighter. If I keep adding white, it's going to get lighter and lighter. If you are serious about painting, one technique or one kind of exercise that I recommend is to make a tonal chart where you start with a color and then you slowly add small increments of white, or on the other spectrum, and you're creating shades, a little bit of black to each of those. And then, you really get to know color and how it changes by adding those two different colors. All right, so we know that we're gonna have like the nose, and then I'm just gonna gently kind of wipe that off. I'm gonna just kind of go around this nose area, and it's kind of bright right now, and that's fine. I'm just gonna wipe that off. Okay, I'm gonna hit that lip. And then I'm going to hit right there on the inside of that eye there. And then I'm going to also hit in the inside of that ear. And the reason why that shows up as more pink is because the thinner skin, the thinner the skin, the more you can see the blood kind of going through it. Now that may look kind of horrendous right now, but we're going to keep working it and it's going to be less horrifying. So I washed my brush out. I'm going to pick up some of that white again and hit that, make that transition a little bit smoother in there. And it's still going to stay bright, but I'm just going to outline this and kind of blend that pink into the ear a little bit more. I put a little bit of a darker right there. I don't know if you saw that or not. I kind of sneaky peeked in there like that. And then I'm going to hit this. This kind of looks a little bit too much, but I'm going to put that in there. Put that around. And you can really, it's like makeup. You know how like contouring, that's exactly what this is. You can change a person's bone structures using makeup. You know, you're not actually changing the bone structure, but you're changing the look of it. So you can really get in there and do, you know, depending on where you highlight stuff, you can really make it look different. All right. So we've got that. I'm gonna wash that out real quick. And then I'm gonna start working on my glaze. So this is gonna be, we're gonna take a little of this matte medium, the golden matte medium, and I'm gonna shake this up, but try not to spill it. This, that's in French. This side, it's water-based dead flat varnish. See? And it's a matte. I like a matte. Personally, I like matte, especially with fur and things like that. I like matte. You can see a little bit more of that texture, I feel. So we're gonna just put, now this is better if you do it in a little cup, but I've got a reservoir off to the side here. So, so I don't know if you can, kind of looks like skim milk right there. All right, so I'm gonna put a little bit of that. I'm gonna take a dollop of this matte medium. I'm not gonna mix it in just quite yet. And this is way too much, but you know, whatever. And then I'm gonna mix this in thoroughly. So it's gonna be nice and runny and light. And when this dries, it's gonna be clear, but right now it looks kind of milky. It looks like the white. Now make sure you're not mixing in the white, because then if you mix in the white, then you're gonna have a different look, which is fine. You know, it's good to experiment. But this, we're gonna kind of antiquify things and make it a little bit something different. Now we have other options here. Oop. Let me brace that up so that kind of goes into that runs. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this burnt or raw umber, and I'm going to take just a tiny bit of this raw umber. And that's going to be, let me see. This is going to be the whole color for all of this. So I'm going to mix this in. I might add a little bit more, because there is a little bit more than it needs to be. So I'm going to add just a little bit more. Basically, you want this to still remain very light. We're working on what's like a wash, like an antique glaze on this. If you put too much brown, you're basically making just paint. You're just painting it on. You're doing a dry brush. This is a little bit different in that we want to accentuate some of the shadows. I've got some burnt light umber here. I'm going to put a little bit of that in there to warm it up, just a wee bit. All right, here we go. All right, now I'm going to mix this in, and if there's any kind of like bits of dried paint in there, I'm going to take those out. Sometimes there's little crusties that get in there. I'm going to take those out because it's going to get stuck into the surface of my sculpture if I don't. And sometimes that you care about that, sometimes you don't care about it. All right, so I'm going to go into the shadows. Where are the shadows? The darkest parts are going to be right here, behind this. They're going to be right here, because that's the ear. They're going to be right underneath this jaw. And then we've got a little bit of shadow here. And maybe I need this a little bit darker. You know, the nice thing about this is that you can add it in layers. And if it's too light, you can go darker. It gets harder to go lighter if you make it too dark. So just keep that in mind. What you can do is to take down some of that sheen of the white, you can go and hit the whole thing. And then in the highlights, you take a paper towel, you gently rub it away. This, I think I need a little bit more color in there because it's getting a little bit. If I was just going to do washes, you can build up washes and it's you can do that. But this, I kind of want to be like a, not do like a too much of a step here. Now you can also use water-based oil paint, and you have to use a water-based one because otherwise the oil and the acrylic don't always like to play nice. So you have to use a water-based oil paint, and you can do the same technique. Now I'm just going to cover all of this, and it's going to take some of the brightness of that pink down, and I'm going to work in sections. So I'm going to work in sections so that I don't accidentally, if you leave this on too long, it's going to stain the white a dark brown. All right. And you may want that. You may want to get that and have it be real dark. But you may also want it to not be a brown bunny. How now, brown cow? You want it to be a white bunny, like what we're doing. And then we're just going to wipe that away. And then I'm going to go back in there. And I'm going to go. If there's a highlight, it's usually followed by a shadow. All right. So if I've got a highlight there, then there's usually a shadow on the other side of that. But you see how that's changed it? It's given it a little bit more, less stark, less one color, and has a little bit more nuance to it. See, that nose is super bright pink. We're going to hit that with that brown glaze and then wipe it off. And it's going to change it. It's going to make it less severe. I'm going to hit in those holes, like the mouth hole and the nose hole and those little whisker holes. And that's going to stick in the recessed areas, but it's going to kind of make it look a little bit it's going to darken the recessed areas, but it's going to, when you wipe it off, it's going to be nice and bright. All right, so I'm going to hit some of this. And just wipe it. And generally speaking, you want to use like if you're going to use a cloth like this, you want to use one that's not going to have a lot of that's going to fall apart. So they have ones that is I don't know, is it Viva, that doesn't have all the lint. So I've got this, and I'm just painting it with this glaze, this antiquing glaze. And I'm going to wipe it off in certain parts. And there you go. So, like I said before, I'm going to go and chase this all the way around. I know that on this back ear here, since it's kind of jacked up into the sky, there's going to be a shadow here. And that's how I'm going to like trick the eye into making you think that it's not this great big thick ear, but it's actually this like floating in air kind of thing. But if you have this real thin and floating in air, guess what happens? It breaks off. Polymer clay is sturdy, but it's not unbreakable. So it's very breakable. So you kind of have to treat it with respect, because otherwise it can break. Now, if it breaks, it's not the end of the world. You can fix it. But why give yourself more work, you know? Why do that? All right, so I'm gonna put this. At this point, I'm doing some kind of washes in certain areas. Get that in there. And then once I'm happy with the level of the washes, I'm gonna hit a little bit in here too. And go all the way around, making sure that I don't have any blank spot. Also, be mindful of where your fingers are, because sometimes you can take paint up that way. Also, I've got my little signature there, so I definitely want that to stand out. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to really kind of insert that and then gently brush that. And then look how nice that stands out. You can, even though that 2024 is real small, you can really see it. All right, so we've got this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with the hair dryer. I'm going to rinse my brush, and then I'm going to hit it with a hair dryer. How about that? I'm going to move my paint so I don't accidentally dry it out, which all of it's pretty dry at this point. All right. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pinky and just kind of get in there. And if I can get in there, I'm going to clean off the eye. And I can generally do that by taking a little tiny brush and a little bit of water and just going over like that. And that'll clean that up. If you want to dab that like it's crying, you can do that also. Now, say you put too much of the dark, you can always take a little bit of water and hit that and rehydrate that and then gently wipe it. Now, what I'm going to do here, the thing that's really going to make this pop is I'm going to go back and add some more highlights. So you may be like, what? He just covered up those highlights. What the heck is he doing? He's going. The thing is, you kind of go and you push and you pull with your um, with your highlights and your shadows, and you can get a little bit more painterly style if you do that. Okay, and I'm working kind of, since this is a thinner brush, I'm working kind of with the grain structure of the fur. And I want this head to kind of stand out. So that's why I'm hitting this like this. I know that there's a little bit of a highlight on this ear, so I'm going to reinforce that. It's going to make it pop out just a little bit. And I use all of the tools that I have. So sometimes I'll use my fingers. Like if I don't want to like stop and like get a paintbrush or whatever that's separate, I can just hit that with my finger and do that as well. So I see there's a little bit of a highlight there. And there's kind of a highlight on the ridge, the forehead ridge. Cindy said, "This is great, Andrew. Also, some animals have bands of color on each hair. Our cat had bands of color on each hair. It was so beautiful." Yeah, so that's more of a literal interpretation. So that is you duplicating color exactly like that, exactly how you see it. This is what I'm trying to do here is create this illusion of depth by creating shadows and highlights. And so it in nature, they may have that banded fur, but in you kind of have to exaggerate certain things. So if you have like an orange cat, you may have to like really amp up the orange to kind of make it stand out as like a recognizable feature. Or like, there's certain things like that with like a caricature, you kind of just are working on building that up. But yeah, you're right that they um on on some animals it's not just one thing, but that's kind of like like a striped cat. But we're kind of building in the subtle shadows. I don't know if you can see that or not on here, but that's what I'm gonna go up to a little bit of a larger brush, and then that way I can cover more area on this body instead of just focusing on these small areas. I can do that. All right. So the goal is to make like a white rabbit, but like I said, we're building in those illusions of shadow to create depth and highlights to create volume. And I don't want to lose the texture. So but I know that as I continue to paint, I'm filling in some of that texture. So it's a fine dance. And also when you're doing these kind of light, kind of really kind of washy effects, you're not adding too much paint. If I worked with a ton of paint and I wasn't working in these kind of thin layers, what would happen is it would really fast, you would lose all of your detail. And you know, you worked hard on that detail, so you don't want to lose it. So this is another dry brushing technique. And I'm just going over so ever so slightly, real lightly, and it's blending this all in. And it's giving that its illusion. I mean, this is not maybe, I don't know, this is kind of like watching paint dry, literally. But I think it is interesting in the sense that, you know, you have the ability to contour and shape things and turn things and make them, like if I want this to look really big and fluffy, I know that bright colors, white, pops forward more, and darker colors and shadows look recessed. So there you go. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. I could go and mess with this all day, all night, adding stuff. I may go around after. You know, there's little things that you can do. Like sometimes if a nose, you can take a little bit of glaze, like a shiny gloss, and hit the nose. A rabbit's nose isn't really glossy like that, but sometimes like a cat's nose is. So you can put a little bit of gloss on that. And that's another little detail that adds that little hint of kind of like natural observation. So if you're just sculpted your eye in polymer, if you put a gloss on that, it looks more like an eye. But since I used a bead, it looks like an eye already. And then this is kind of an angle. So it looks weird because you're always seeing it like this, but really it's more like this. And this is also a thing where you can step back and look. Because like right here, this is real dark. So I may want to come back in here and hit it with a little bit of a lighter and kind of make that less recessed. Because I was looking at like this and it looks lighter, but when you look at it from up above, it can kind of look a little bit like it's deeper. So I'm just going to hit this real quick with this. And this may be too white. That's all right. If it's too white, we can always go back in and hit it with some of this glaze. Antiquing glaze. I just messed it up. That's all right. If you mess up, it's not the end of the world. You can always go back in and adjust it. We just don't want to lose a bunch of the hard work that we put in kind of establishing those earlier dark layers. So we don't want to lose all of that, but at the same time, I do want this head to kind of come out a little bit more and look more like a white rabbit instead of like a brown rabbit. So that's how we're building this up. And I'm getting there, almost done. Promise. And then how about the sneak peek? If anybody's still watching, we'll do the sneak peek. After I kind of, I had a teacher who said, murder your darlings. So sometimes what happens is we have something that's so precious. We're so proud of the thing we made that we kind of stop. We halt our progress and it becomes our darling. We want to protect it and we don't want to mess it up. We want to like preserve it as like the darling. But the thing is sometimes if we hold on too tight, things get kind of, stagnant, or they don't change, or they don't look right, or whatever. And we're too afraid to do that. Like one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is the blank canvas syndrome. And so they'll see a blank canvas and get real intimidated. Um, and they're like, well, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And uh, they get paralyzed because it's the white surface is so perfect and pristine, and they don't want to mess it up. Especially if you spend a lot of money on a canvas. Canvases can be real expensive. So I would see people and they would freeze up. They would say, "Oh, I don't know. I'll do something else." They'll work on pieces of cardboard that they found on the street, but they won't work on this beautiful, pristine canvas. So the idea is, how do you get over that? And sometimes you have to mess up in order to like level up. Like, I kind of messed up there, but I think it looks better. I took down a little bit of the harshness of some of those darker lines and made them a little bit softer. And I think it looks more like a rabbit now, like a white rabbit. So there's that. So, anyways, one way that you can get over that blank canvas syndrome is to take something and spill something on that canvas, and then you get over that real quick because it's no longer pristine. You got to do something with that then. All right, I'm gonna hit it one more. It's like that one more heat thing when you're blacksmithing. You don't want to mess it up because you can burn it up. But no, with this, it's pretty forgiving. I'm just going to hit right there and right there, the little tippy tip of that. Maybe right there too. Maybe right there too. Maybe right there too. All right. And then I'm just going to dry this real quick, and then we'll go into the sneak peek. So, what do you do once you have it like so? Um, you can leave it like it is, and it'll be perfectly fine. Or you can go back over and put a thin layer of this water-based dead flat varnish, and it will make it really matte. And you can just layer that on top, and that'll act as a protective layer. Because right now, the polymer is plastic, the acrylic is plastic. Sometimes plastic doesn't want to like play nice with each other, but we did have that layer of gesso down. So that's going to help. We have a lot of texture. That's going to help. That's going to work in our favors. However, if people handle this, it's going to wear away. It's like, I made this one sculpture of like a horse for this fundraiser, and people were rubbing it for good luck, and it's rubbing the paint off. So you just have to keep that in mind, so that you don't have to constantly repaint and stuff. So there you go. There's this. Now we're going to move into the sneak peek. So earlier today, I filmed a segment with William on mold making. So I show how to make the silicone mold. And you have to do the silicone mold before you do the paint. All right. And then I just poured a really quick a fast cast resin. And let me see if I can get it out. You gently pry it. There's a little bit where I can trim the edge of this mold if I wanted to. I kind of like to have that edge because it's the sign to stop, like this, like the stop sign that says, okay, it's time to stop. And then I'm going to go all the way around it, kind of prying up. And you can, let me see if I can pull it. All right, so here you go. This is a resin copy of that sculpture. That way, you know, the one sculpture, it didn't take me too long, but now this is kind of, usually you demold this while this is still kind of setting up and are not fully cured. And then if you have any of this like flashing or whatever, you can take a pocket knife and just shave it off. It has had a chance to cure a little bit, so it's a little bit stiff. See, it's kind of stiff. The nice thing about this is nice and sturdy. If I do that with this, it's going to be in pieces. But this, nice and sturdy. But this, if I did that, I'd probably break it. So I don't want to break it. So, but I show how to make a mold so that you can do this fast cast resin. Now, as you can see, the surface is a little bit different because this is after the paint. You can see the difference. And after pre-paint, after paint. See how that kind of, how it's not as textured now? But because you have the texture before, then you can get kind of these effects, right? You can get these kind of, you can play with these, you can play with that, right? That kind of looks not that great, but over here, and even the little tiny, the date got preserved. So there you go. So that's a sneak peek of how to do this. Do you want to see me do one of these? All right. So you've got a mold, and the first couple pours that you do in your mold are going to be a little bit. Well, let's do this. Maybe let's do this a different day because I've done this before on different things. But let's do this a different day, and then that'll give you something to look forward to. And I think we covered a lot, almost 2 hours with painting. So, in reality, it was just about an hour to paint this. And if I wasn't talking, I probably could have got it done a little bit quicker. But so I show you in that YouTube video that we're working on how to make this silicone mold. And then, so yeah, so we've got the step by step on how to make the master, the kind of the original, and make that into kind of a painterly sculpture, and then how you can make copies. All right. And for the mold is going to be a separate YouTube video. It's already filmed, already show step by step on how to make the mold, but how to pour the resin, it's a little bit different. So I got that kind of set up. I guess I can do it. Let me do it. All right. So first things first, you're going to want to have a surface that is level. If you have a surface that's not level, you need to bust out that level and see. Because if you have it and one side's jacked up, all the resin's going to pour to that end, and then you're going to have a thin spot. So you want this to be as level as possible. Now, another thing to keep in mind is you want to have a surface that you don't mind messing up. Because if you spill something, you don't want it to go on your heirloom table, and somebody is gonna, they're gonna cry and roll over in the graves. You don't want that to happen. Next thing you want to do is read the manufacturer's instructions for the resin that you're using. All resin, there's a bunch of different kinds of resin and they're all different. So some are done by weight, some are done by volume. The one that I'm using today is by Smooth On, and you can't see it. Let me put this. This is real close, but it's Smooth Cast 300Q. Smooth Cast 300Q. All right. And for this resin, it's a 1-to-1 by volume, or you can do it by weight, but it's a little bit different. Since it's done by volume, I like to do it by volume. All right. So it says to shake it, and that's so that nothing settles. You don't want to shake it too aggressively because you're going to make a whole bunch of air bubbles. This is pretty good about getting the air bubbles out. And also, if they're inside, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't really matter. If you have chemical allergies, make sure that you wear gloves. If you have some nice clothes, maybe change into the dirty clothes, not dirty clothes, but your play clothes. And if you are sensitive to anything kind of like chemically, make sure you have your windows open and you got your ventilation going. One thing that you should be mindful of is resin is temperature sensitive. Most resin is temperature sensitive. So if you have it freezing cold, you have to store this for one above 73 degrees. If it gets colder than that, you can have a chance of you're going to spoil your resin. Now, if it gets too hot, it can also spoil. So it has to have that sweet spot in to set up also. Because sometimes if it's too hot and you try to set it up, parts of it will set up quicker and then some parts may not set up at all. So you want to have it not be too hot and not be too cold. Now, the thing that we're going to do, colder temperatures makes the resin set up slower. Hotter temperatures make it set up quicker. This is a fast cast resin. When I say fast, I mean it. It's fast like lightning, y'all. I generally work pretty slow. So the first pour I did of this, half of it froze up in the cup already, set up in the cup before while I was pouring it, it kind of froze like a waterfall while I was pouring it. So you don't want that to happen. So we have to work kind of quick. You have a pot time, which means you can pour it. That's like your work time of 30 seconds. Is it 30 seconds? You have a pot time of, let me see. That's not on that one. You have a pot life is 30 seconds, and cure time is approximately 4 to 5 minutes, depending on the mass. There's a thing called mass sensitivity. The more mass you have, the quicker it sets up. The thinner mass you have, the slower it will set up. So it can look like it's set up in the middle, but if you have these real like thin ears and things like that, that can take longer to set up than the thick part. You would think that the thin parts would set up faster than the thick parts, but actually it's a mass sensitivity, so the thicker parts will set up quicker than the thinner parts. I know that sounds opposite day, but it's true. All right. So you have some options here. You can brush the inside of the silicone mold with different pigment powders. You can actually paint using those pigment powders. So if you have like uh, a serpent and you want it to be green, you can paint the inside with green powder and knock off the excess, and it's going to, wherever the resin sticks to that, it's going to be green and it's going to be baked into the surface of the resin. So that's one way that you can add color. Some people will dust their molds with cornstarch. And if you remember when we were talking about painting techniques, we wanted to have a tooth on this, so we've added gesso. So some people will add like cornstarch, or they'll dust it with with like a calcium carbonate, and or like a gypsum powder. Anyways, so you can, some people will dust it with baby powder, all different kinds of things. One of the common misconceptions was that that is the mold release. For this particular project, you don't necessarily need a mold release. Using a mold release will sometimes help keep your mold last longer. However, you can lose detail with that. So there's trade-offs to everything. So if you don't use a mold release, it can last less. Sometimes the idea was that like you're flouring your cutting board, so you don't, or your rolling board, so you don't want your bread dough to stick. It, it kind of works like that, but also it's mostly so that you can either add color or texture and have a tooth that the paint is going to stick to. But you can also do it without that. So what we're going to do is without that. If you do decide to use cornstarch, use a soft, fluffy brush. You don't want to use a real stiff brush. You want something that's nice and soft. A makeup brush works wonderful. You tap it into the powder and you paint it on. Make sure you're loosely brushing it in. And then once you've gotten all of it, all the nooks and crannies, all them little things, all them little giblets covered, you turn it over and you pat the baby on the butt and you knock off the excess powder. If you have too much powder and it's not thoroughly mixed in, it's going to cause, sometimes it'll, if you have too much powder, sometimes it'll cause the resin not to set up, but sometimes it will also cause um, parts of your mold not to cast. So if you have a great big clump of cornstarch up in the ear and you pour the resin, um, it's not, it may not fill in. It means that that cornstarch may not soak up into that resin. So then you're gonna have a cavity, and then you're gonna have to go back over and fill that hole in with epoxy sculpt or something else, so that there's not a bunch of holes in your sculpture. I feel like a lot of times where the holes are, it's usually in the most pain in the butt spot that's most noticeable. So you'll see it. It'll be like the tip of an ear or the tip of the nose on a face or, like the eyelid or something like that. So, generally speaking, that's usually what happens to me. So, anything I can reduce so I don't have to go back in and sculpt on top of my sculpture and spend that extra time cleaning that up, all the better, right? So, what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to use any powder this time, and I'm just going to show you how it works. Um, just using the resin and the mold. All right, so I have my graduated cups at the cottage. And I'm not at the cottage. So luckily, I have this cough medicine in the cabinet, and I hijacked the lids, and I'm going to use these. Now, I've written on these A and B, A and B, and the different parts of your resin is a two-part mixture of resin are part A and part B. You do not want to cross contaminate them because if you cross contaminate, then it's going to set up and that can cause problems. So, one time I was in a workshop with somebody and they mixed up the lids. And guess what happened? That lid got welded to the top of the bottle. It would not come loose, and it it corrupted that resin. So that almost a whole brand new bottle of resin was they had to pitch it in the trash because it was getting kind of like it wasn't going to work. So you just kind of have to be mindful of keeping things separate and keeping it working kind of clean while you're doing it. So I always recommend having like a paper towel ready to wipe things off, and having a good like roll of paper towels is good because you don't want to wipe up the residue of part A and then wipe up the residue of part B, and then all of a sudden your paper towel sticks to the lid and you can't get it loose. So you just have to be careful. All right. I've got a cup, my big cup, and let me see if I can't angle this. All right, I can angle it. You're going to just see some of this background information. And I've got something to stir. All right. Very fancy tools here. All right. I kind of like this. We go to the sheets probably more than we should, but we get this plastic silverware, even though if you tell them not to put in there, somehow it ends up in there anyway. So we have a great big like container, and they can't take it back either. So once it's in the bag and it leaves the premises, they can't take it back. So we ended up with this like huge bin full of plastic utensils, and so that's why I've got this. These are nice because you can really get into that kind of crook in there, that little elbow in there. All right, so this is the stuff I'm talking about. It's from Smooth On. This is the big container. Smooth Cast 300Q. White fast set liquid plastic. All right, so we pre-shook this. This is a part B. I measured this out beforehand. Generally speaking, what I would recommend is if you make a bunch of molds, keep some of the molds off to the side and have them ready to go. Because guess what? If you make too much, then you can just pour it into your mold. And even if it doesn't fill all the way, you can add layers and layers of this resin and it will bond to itself. So if you want that, if you don't want to waste the resin, that's what you do. You keep some molds off to the side, and then you can have that be there. All right, so I like to put the B first And I know some people are going to be like, what? I put the B first into the big cup because it's a little bit thicker. It's more viscous. So it takes me a little bit more time to scoop it out of the container when I'm mixing and measuring. So the part A is a little bit thinner. As I'm imagining this is the hardener. It's a little bit more runny. So it just pours right out of there. So that shaves a couple seconds off, because if I put the A first and then I put the B in there, you lose pretty much 3 or 4 seconds of time kind of scraping out the B. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully pour this in there. All right, so this is 30 milliliters. I'm going to pour that into the big one. All right. And we're going to go back for seconds. All right. So at this point, I'm going to wipe down my container. You can't see it, but I'm wiping it. I'm going to pour the remainder of this B in with the other B. If you need to take your plastic knife and scrape it out, you can scrape it out. And then I'm going to wipe out my container. And I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to throw that paper towel in the trash. I'm going to tear off another one to get ready. I've got my A, my part A. And one thing I'm going to mention is you want this to be flat on the table. You don't want to hold this up in the air and do it, because it's going to give you a false reading. What it's going to do is, if it's not on a flat surface, there's a line here. That line where the liquid meets that line is called the meniscus. That's kind of the line that creates the surface of this creates a line. It's called the meniscus. And your meniscus will not be even if you hold it up into the air like you're going to cheer somebody. So have that flat on the table. Now, here is where we got to cook with the gas. We're not going to dilly-dally. I'm actually not going to talk very much. I'm going to just do what I need to do, and that's what's going to happen. All right? So I'm going to pour the A into the B, and then I'm going to pour another 30 milliliters. All right, I'm going to seal this up real quick so I don't accidentally knock it over. Wipe that down real quick. I'll mess with this business in a second. And then, hey Siri, set a timer for 1 minute.
1 minute, starting now.
All right. Sorry if I made your all's virtual assistant's timer, but I need that. So what I'm looking for is, I don't want this to be streaky. I'm scraping down the sides. I am working in a kind of figure 8 shape. And it's starting to heat up. And it's not been a full minute, but we're going to roll with it because I don't want this to set up. I'm going to pour this in, and I'm going to move it around so I don't accidentally miss a spot. And then this table, I don't think is level. Okay. And we have a little bit left over. That's where you have your extra mold. Hey Siri, stop the timer. And that's where having the extra, see, whoop, there you go. That's setting up. Isn't that crazy how quickly this set up? You can actually see it steaming in this room because it's a little bit chilly in here, and you can actually see it steaming. I don't know if you can see the steam on camera, but it's a little bit chilly in this room, but it's a chemical reaction, and oh, it wasn't level, y'all. Oh wow. All right, so that's my fault. This is really hot because I did have the extra resin. I was just worried that it was going to overfill over here. So I didn't fill it and I didn't see this. Now, if I wanted to, I could mix some more up and flush that out, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is have this set. Usually with resin, it takes 8 hours. If you're used to working with a clear resin, it takes 8 hours to set up for a lot of them. This, the cure time is 4 to 5 minutes. And as you can see, that was way not 4 to 5 minutes. That was like a minute. So while I'm waiting for that to fully set up, I'm going to I'm going to wipe out my cup. And then I'm going to put this cup or this paper towel in the garbage so I don't cross-contaminate. Now, because there's stuff in there, that's pretty much done. I hate to throw that away, but I can't really reuse this. It's hot. So, set this off to the side and let it cool down and then pitch it in the garbage. I don't know if it will actually get to the point where it can cause a fire, but I don't want to risk it. So I'm just going to put this off to the side and let it cool down as it cures. And then eventually I can go back in there and pitch in the garbage. I kind of feel bad because I knew that could have happened, and I warned people not to do that. But this table, a little bit wonkadoodle, and then this board on top probably doesn't help. All right, so in the middle, you can probably feel it that it's set up already. However, I'm not going to demold it quite yet because there are some thinner pieces, especially up here, but you can feel it. I wish you could feel it through the video, but it's hot. It's hot, y'all. You could get maybe burnt. I don't know. I don't know about burnt, but maybe it kind of feels nice. Put that on my back. And then in 4 to 5 minutes, which has already been a couple minutes, it's probably set up. And let's see. Is it going to do it? Okay. Think it's ready. So I'm just going to kind of peel it. And like I did the other one, release the sides. There you go. Now this will take a little bit of time to fully cure. I still think that this is a decent cast. The main parts got cast. There's no visible air bubbles that I can see. It's just not as thick down here. So there's that. this is hot. So, anyway. So if I wanted to, if I had any flashing, which is when it comes out and over and kind of has this like thin film, like how it is on this one, I take my pocket knife and just run that over there. Right now, this is cured, so it's super hard. To get this off, I could try with my pocket knife, but I don't know if I would be able to do a very good job, and I could actually maybe cut myself, so I don't want to do that. So what I'll do is I'll take the Dremel, or either a Dremel or a flex shaft, and just take and grind this down so that it's nice and smooth and doesn't have that sharp kind of protrusion off to the side. But this is the one we made on right now. We did this right now, y'all, together. And that took what? Well, we know how long it took. It took 30 seconds pot life and 4 to 5 minutes to set up. But it took, you know what, not that long. So if you're in production, that's a good thing to do to have. So this, when we sculpted this, the original took about 2 hours or so, maybe about an hour and a half. I talked a lot, so that was kind of, and you can see there's a little bit of shrinkage. There's a little bit of shrinkage in there, but it's still pretty good, I think. You can kind of see this shrinkage. How big is the difference? I don't know if you're going to be able to see it that way. So there is maybe, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's there's a little bit of a shrinkage. So there you go. Maybe on this one is not as much shrinkage because, yeah, that feels actually bigger. It is bigger actually because I overfilled it. So anyway, so when I go and I'm gonna mount these, I think onto like a wood panel or something like that with a background, maybe a lasered piece of wood or acrylic or something. Um, so I can just glue this with a heavy duty kind of like uh, epoxy glue or even a construction adhesive, something that's going to be real sturdy and hold up to it. If I wanted to turn this into a plaque, what I would do is I can drill into this. This is super hard. This is super sturdy. I mean, it's real sturdy, So if I wanted to, I could drill into it and put a hanging mechanism or just drill into it and kind of angle it. And then that way, when you put it, it will hook. Like, if you have a screw, if it's slightly angled, it will fit in there like that. And now the lip of the screw or the head of the screw will fit underneath that lip and hold it. You just have to use a slightly larger drill bit and then just be careful that you don't go through your piece. So you have quite a bit of room here. So you can do that and you could hang it on there plaque style. So it's up to you. Also, if anybody's interested in these, maybe let us know and we'll pour off some some copies for people for purchase if people are interested in that kind of thing. I don't know if people are interested in that or not. So you can paint your own bunny. Or if you're more interested in like a finished object, I was thinking of maybe making armor for these and sculpting the armor on top. Some battle bunnies that I did little enameled pendants of. So there you go. All right. I'm not gonna flip this around. I feel slightly sweaty. It's always slightly nerve-wracking when you do resin and you have the phone in the way or the cameras in the way. I hope you enjoyed this evening. On today's live, we worked on painting techniques and we painted this together. We also got a sneak peek of the project, a forthcoming YouTube project on how to make a mold. And we also got a crash course in using fast cast resin. As always, please, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it. Help us boost the signal and get the word out about our small business. Just yesterday, somebody said, "Oh, these people, they're really cool. Are they new?" And we're like, "No, we've been around for about 12 years." But sometimes people don't know that, they just don't know who we are. So it'd be nice if we could reach those people and hopefully be able to pay our mortgage. So if you are in need of beading supplies, head on over to www.allegorygallery.com. The physical store is temporarily closed while we move and transition to a new city. However, the online store is open every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can shop in your underwear or naked, whatever you want to do. Nobody's going to know but you and maybe whoever else is around you, but we're not going to know. And we would appreciate that very much. All right. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody out there. I don't think I'm going to do a hashtag AG live challenge tonight. Maybe tomorrow we'll do one. So thanks again. If you didn't get one of the, if you didn't do the ones from before, maybe now's your catch up day. And you can catch up if you want to do that. Share your piece in the Allegory Gallery Design Challenge group. I'm going to go make some dinner and go to sleep. I'm pretty tired. All right. Have a great night, everybody. See ya.